This is the Prestigious Initiative, and these are the points. I'm Chris Kent, and I'm joining Chris Bean. Hello, Mr. Bean.
Hello, sir.
Let's talk about our conversation with Alan Lazarus. I'm really glad we could sit down with Alan, especially after talking to Kevin and seeing one side of their business, so to speak, and the way he deals with things, and seeing Alan's side of it and the way that he deals with things. They definitely are, number one, a complementary duo, also two incredible people to be able to sit down and kind of pick their brains and get their insight. I really, really enjoyed hearing him, and I loved how, in the best way possible, they're two distinctly different people that have different approaches to being next level. And it was great to be able to hear Alan's and Kevin's previously. And again, great people, both of them, to be able to sit down with and kind of learn from.
Yeah, I think you hit it right on. And the cool thing is, it is interesting to see their two sides and the difference that they have in how they are. Just how they are. They're two different people, and they are two different people. And the cool thing is, we are two different people. And so it's interesting seeing some similarities between what they're doing and what we are doing as well. And so that is interesting and definitely, but also intriguing and inspiring, I would say as well.
Yes, sir. I like that we started our conversation kind of getting to the idea and something that drives Alan, in which he mentioned it's not just the message, but also the messenger. And so we spent a lot of time learning about him and his experiences and what kind of brought him to where he is. And again, I think that's important because sometimes we don't always think about that. We think, hey, I have this great information to share with someone. Why aren't people listening to me? I have this great idea, when really it comes down to who is giving that message and who you really are. Because if you have a great message, but you're not a great person, those two things don't really line up. And so again, to hear his idea behind that, and maybe I'm reading more into it than he intended originally. However, I do think it's a great thing to keep in mind that it's not only important what you're saying, but also who that's coming from. And so I love to be able to kind of feel like we had an insight into who Alan is and what brought him to where he is and why it's important for him to be a driving force in peak performance and really trying to become all that you are with what you have. And again, I think that's just a huge huge component to anybody trying to deliver information or get a message across, is trying to be authentic and really let people know who you are, where you're coming from, and why there is importance in what you have to say.
Yeah, I think that despite what some people want, we are who we are today because of those experiences that we had in the past, and those really do shape and mold you into the person that you are. And having an understanding of the type of person Alan is clear because of the image that he gave us from his journey into the person that he is now today. And so again, I think that, like you talked about, being aware of who you are because of where you were, and then for that person that you're talking with to know those things, to know where you're coming from as you're sharing those different ideas and helpful insights in order to help them. It is key for them to know where you're coming from. So yeah, and he painted that picture very well. So we were all able to clearly understand where he was coming from.
Yes, sir. I enjoyed our conversation, not only because of Alan, but also because of what we kind of dove into. And in reality, we talked a lot about business. We talked a lot about maybe a large business, maybe a personal business, maybe a side hustle, maybe whatever it is. We talked a lot about business and the ideas behind business. And so that was a cool conversation to have, because we've talked to a lot of life coaches and even some authors and people really focused on personal development, personal growth, and developing yourself, which is important. And to Alan is also very important. We can hear how he prioritized certain parts of his life, his health, his intimate relationships, his own personal happiness. He develops all of that so that he can be an effective businessman, an effective partner, an effective friend, and all these things. But again, I would say that most of our conversation kind of focused on business, and some of those things do translate to individual and personal life. And that was, again, cool because we're hearing it in one area and also drawing parallels and lines into how it can affect us in a different area. And so I guess kind of the first topic to kind of get into, we mentioned sustainability in your abilities, in your goals. And I think that's important, again, not only in business, but in your personal life. If you can do something, he mentioned, I forget the exact example, but you go to the gym. You can go to the gym for 3 hours one day and do lots and lots of stuff. But can you do that every single day for the next 4 weeks? Probably not. You can't spend that much time, not only because it would be a huge waste of time, not waste of time, I'm sorry. It'd be a huge use of time, but then also physically, mentally, maybe you can't handle that. So it's not sustainable. And so whether you're talking about a business adventure or something you're doing for yourself, prioritizing sustainability in those activities and in those abilities and your goals, I think is a great thing to keep in mind when we're developing systems and working on growing and becoming better.
Sustainability, I think, is the more often overlooked area for business and personal development and all of those things, because you go flat out as hard as you can for 2 weeks or a month or however long you can sustain that. And you're like, whoa, that's too much. I need to back off. But instead of backing off, you just quit completely, which of course is not what you'd want to do. You want to have, it's, and I think we talked about this with Annie, but your growth, if you have that overnight success, lots of times you'll have that overnight failure and you won't come back. But that slow growth, the hard work that you dedicate and put in for yourself, or your whoever your business, whatever it is, but that slow, sustained effort, you might of course go through some ups and downs, but the downs won't be as low as if you went overnight and then overnight. And seemingly that's more often how that goes. And I think that is a byproduct of a lack of sustainability, because if you have that sustainability built into the systems and how you bring yourself to your business, your life, the personal development, your physical, whatever it is. But if you have that sustained, slow burn kind of, that is so much more impactful and beneficial to who you are, because then you can sustain that. Consistency is so important, because if you do a little bit of work for a month, and then you do a little bit of work on the next month, a little bit of work on the next month, a little bit of work on the next month, is so much more impactful than doing a lot of work in 1 month and no work for the rest of the months. Right? That gets you nowhere. But that little bit of work and a little bit of work and a little bit of work and that's where the growth happens. And he talked about, and I'm sure maybe you talked about this a little bit later, but he talked about getting 3%, so percentage better.
He said 0.1.
Yeah, 0.1% better, every day. If you can get 0.1% better and then 0.1% better, over the course of a year, oh my gosh, it's so much more times better than you would have otherwise been. But if you only get 5% better in a month, yeah, that might sound really good, but it's not sustainable for you to be able to do continually. And so that sustainability is so important to keeping that growth on an upward trajectory.
And in that same example, you mentioned doing that 0.1% better for 365 days a year. And then he also brought in the idea that, let's say you take weekends off. Well, you're 0.1 times better, let's say 256. That number is going to be significantly lower. And so when talking about sustainability, you need to find something that you can try to do as much as possible, because the more you can do it, again, the more you're going to grow. And so if it's not sustainable for you to do X, Y, or Z thing 7 days a week or as much as you can, maybe you need to scale back and try to make it more sustainable, which also kind of leads into another key topic that Alan brought up, which is longevity. Rather than focus on something that's going to last a little bit of time, or going into a business or an endeavor or a pursuit with a small time frame, trying to find something that you can do for a really long time. And so, in the case of our podcast, let's say we went into the podcast saying, hey, we're going to do this for 2 years. Well, we're going to go hard for 2 years. And then when 2 years is up, okay, well, we're done. It's over with. That's not something that we want to, going into it that way, prolong for a very long time. But when we go into it with the mindset of, hey, this is something I want to do, let's make it sustainable so I can do it as much as I can without getting burnt out. But then let's also make it a long-term thing. So when we're making decisions and when we're making moves, we have a long-term mindset. So it's not, hey, we're doing this for 2 years, so it doesn't matter if I buy the cheap equipment. It doesn't matter if I, talk to 4 people, because it's going to be over in 2 years or whatnot. But, instead, with that longevity mindset, hey, let's try to get the best equipment we can so that it lasts us longer. Let's try to talk to as many people as we can so we can learn the most over this time. And again, having longevity in mind as well is important when you're making decisions, making goals in business and in life, because it ties into that sustainability and how long you can sustain that thing, depending on how long you want it to last or how long you think it could last. And so that was another big topic we talked about on top of sustainability, was also the longevity of endeavors, of ideas, of goals, of values, and how long that can go on for, and kind of proportionally determining what you're going to put into it based on that longevity. Again, ties into the sustainability as well.
Yeah, I think, we've talked about a lot of intentions before. And so coming at decisions with the intention of longevity and the intention of sustainability, I think those two things coupled will put whatever your endeavors are on a good path. Because if your intention is sustainability and your intention is longevity, then the decisions that you make with those two things in mind will help to put you on the right path. And how can it not? If you're thinking about how can I do this, and what are my decisions, and how are they affecting the longevity of this, and how are my decisions, and what are my decisions, and how do they interact with the sustainability of this? Is this going to be a prolonged effort that I can sustain or not? And then, you have sustainability and longevity at the heart and the intention of how you are making your decisions. Wow. Think about how that can be so impactful to any decisions that you make with those two intentions in mind.
Yeah, which perfectly leads into the next big idea I would consider we talked about, which is improvement. When you're making these decisions, deciding what your next move is, trying to make the upward move. So instead of making a decision that's going to put you in the same level or put you worse than where you were before, continuing to do things that are going to continue to raise you up. We talked about with his daily routine, one of his focuses for this year that he mentioned was his health, his fitness. And so he talked about, him and his partner every day, they devoted to exercising every day. And that's 30 minutes at least, walking, weightlifting, swimming, running, whatever it is. They've devoted themselves to that. And that already is the improvement mindset. Hey, if I do 30 minutes of exercise a day, again, that 0.1 mentality, I'm going to be this much better by the time the end of the year comes. But again, the idea there is improvement. And so holding themselves to that standard, hey, we're going to do 30 minutes every day, at least. Maybe we'll do more, but we're always going to do 30 minutes, and they're continuing to choose something that's sustainable, that can last for a long time. But the whole idea behind it is improvement. They're wanting to get better. And so again, keeping sustainability, longevity, and then making sure that what you're doing is actually beneficial, actually going to be something that's going to help you make an improvement, is also very important. Because I could have a goal of sustainably eating 30 potato chips for the next 5 years. Great. I'm sure I could do that. No problem. Now, is that going to make me better? Probably not. Not to bash potato chips, but you get the idea. Choosing something negative, choosing something that won't necessarily be good for you or benefit you. You can be sustainable with it. It can be sustainable. You can keep it going for a long time, but you're not benefiting yourself. You're not getting any better because of it. So that's another thing to consider working on business goals and also personal goals and things to work toward.
I think the key there that I learned from him was to correctly define what your output can or should be. And so he talked about, working out for 30 minutes every day, but okay, that working out involves walking your dog, all these things. It's not just I have to be in the gym every day for 30 minutes. No. There's lots of different parameters that will facilitate that working out. And being able to correctly define what that means to you means that you can show up adequately prepared to do that 30-minute routine, if it's at the gym or if it's walking the dog or if it's, whatever it is. But if you have ill-defined definitions of what that 30 minutes means, that might mean that you have to go to the gym every day for 30 minutes. And that's not necessarily the same. You can still have that impact without necessarily going to the gym. So being able to correctly define the terms and what they mean for you and kind of what you allow yourself to do is so helpful and impactful and really important and overlooked. Because if you say, okay, you have to work out for 30 minutes every day, in my head, I think, okay, I got to go to the gym every day for 30 minutes. And maybe that's something you can sustain, maybe not. There's some days that something comes up, but you could probably get a 15-minute walk in here and a 15-minute walk in here, after breakfast and before bed, after dinner. There's your 30 minutes of exercise, so being able to define what that actually means, and we're using exercise as an example here, but you can see how that can expand to other areas. Be able to correctly define what that means and what you allow into that improvement area, I think is really important.
Yeah, it reminds me of our conversation with Daniel, the life designer, and we talked about standards versus goals. So your standard is, I will always do this, but your goal is, well, I want to do this. So as long as I do this, I'm improving myself, but reaching my goals can make me even more and more better. So I like how those two things kind of overlap, and drawing those parallels between people we're talking to is always cool to do. So the last thing that I kind of took away from our conversation with Alan, again, is scalability. And so when you're dealing with business more so, you're able to scale your activities, scale your tasks, so to speak. So he's talking about his business, and he has them at the top, and then there's all these things underneath him that these people are able to do because he's able to coach them and teach them and help them define their goals and making them scalable, make them long term, make them improvement oriented, and kind of make it work. And so I think it's an important thing to keep in mind, again, more so in business, but you can still do it in your personal life, making these things scalable too. So it's not something that's going to overwhelm you, but something that you can kind of delegate and kind of separate and put into different areas, I think is important as well. And Alan had lots to say and some valuable insights on that as well.
Yeah, again, I think it was so nice having met with Kevin before, and then seeing the other side with Alan. It was such a helpful conversation, and very, very clear the dynamic aspect of their relationship and how they complement each other. So I was very, very happy to talk and learn from Alan.
Yes, sir. Make sure you follow us on social media. You can find the podcast at Prestigious Pod.
You can find me, Chris Bean, at Chris Bean Official.
You can find me, Mr. Kent, at Mr. Chris R. Kent.
And if you like our content and would like to subscribe to our email, you can do that via our social media or on the website.
Make sure you also join our Discord for exclusive content and personal interactions.
If you would like to be coached on how to live a more prestigious life by me, Chris Bean, you can do that by reaching out on one of my social medias or by emailing the podcast at prestigiousinitiative@gmail.com.
Those are the points. Make sure you come back next week for even more points and another great conversation. Until next time, I'm Chris Kent.
And I'm Chris Bean.